Hi, it's Robbie from Southern California. You know, I get a lot of questions because everybody knows how I love my zucchini. Not real big on a lot of other squash, but I really love my zucchini. And you ask me a lot how I deal with squash bugs or squash borers. We don't have them here. There's some new insects that I've heard that are in California and they can cause and wreak havoc, but we don't have any here. So I'm not worried about that. We have other insects, but they don't really destroy the plant. Anything can destroy the plant. My problem is ground squirrels. They can get in there and chew the center of my plant out, so I have that issue. But squash bugs and squash borers, I know a lot of you are dealing with it. So I done a little research on them, and I can't tell you what you can do. I've heard a lot of things like you can start your squash later in the year so your plants can get bigger, so by the time the squash bugs or squash borers get to them, your plants have already produced, like maybe planting them in July, this time of the year, so starting the young baby plants and seeds in the house and then putting them out. And the reasoning for that is a lot of these insects, these squash bugs, are coming out of the ground and they're laying their eggs usually between June and midway through summer. And this way you may be able to get your plants growing and avoid some of the peak times when they're laying their eggs. Some of them lay their eggs and the females die after they lay their eggs, which takes about 5 days for them to do. And the other thing too is you can use diatomaceous earth. I don't use it around here. It could harm other insects that actually want, or maybe even birds or other things. And you can use 7 dust, but you don't want to use that if you've got dogs or anything because it's not good for them to inhale. And some people try companion planting like catnip, mints, marigolds, radishes, nasturtiums, and different things. But you know what? It's kind of like us going to a store. If we want to look for candy, we're going to go down the aisles and we're going to find that candy we want if we know that it's in there. So that doesn't always work either. So I would do it differently if I had to deal with them. If I was dealing with them, and let me tell you something, if I lived in an area where I had either one of those insects, I will say that I still will grow zucchini. Zucchini is my number one vegetable to grow. I absolutely love zucchini. I'm going to say this is funny. I mean, I could not stand zucchini growing up. I didn't even want to look at this stuff. I mean, they used to chop it up and put it in tomato sauce or tomato soup, and it was like, I don't want that. But when I started growing it on my own and started cooking it on my own, I found out that it's fabulous. You put it into everything. You make chili on the stovetop or your pressure cooker, grate up a zucchini and put it in there. It makes more chili. You don't know it's there, and it cooks in, and everything tastes so good. I use it in enchiladas. I use it in taco meat. I like beef. I'm not vegan, and I like a little bit of beef. Getting older, beef is kind of hard on me, but I do like a little beef. So what I do is I now know, I was not going to do this. It's turned into a cooking thing. Real quick, I'll buy a package of hamburger meat. I'll take out 1 or 2 hamburgers. I will put them on a pan. I will fry them down, so you have nice ground meat. And then I add into that a big zucchini. I'll grate it up and put it in and just cook it for a few minutes. You can put salsa in it. You could leave it the way it is, salt and pepper. And the zucchini incorporates with the meat. So you get a big bowl, it looks like, of meat that you can put in tacos, but it's actually half or less meat than that because you have so much squash. So we can get into that another time because I use it for everything. If I was dealing with squash borers, to me, you would have to deal with them the same way. If I was dealing with it, I would definitely be working on growing my zucchini no matter what, because that is what I look forward to. So here's my thoughts on what I would do. These insects get into the soil, very much like our fruit beetles around here. When they're in the soil, they're not doing that much damage. They're not doing anything. They're just nothing. It's when they come out. It's when they lay their eggs. One looks like a beetle and one looks like a wasp. It's kind of a mothy wasp. Well, that's when they lay their eggs. And what happens is they do get into the soil, but that's not the problem. The problem is when they lay their eggs, they hatch and they burrow, which you all probably know, into your plant, and then they live inside the plant, eating the plant away. Now, there is one big fortunate thing about them. They're big. Scary big that if I saw them flying around, I'd be hiding. but they're good size. They're a good size beetle, which is good. That's good. Both of them. They're both big. So we now know that we can use tool. The second thing is I looked it up to make sure if either one of them could chew in any way. Sometimes your wasp, regular like a bee, wasp, they can chew. So they could chew through things if they want to get into something like tool. But they don't have the ability to chew. There's always an exception to the rule. Someone's going to be born with a beautiful set of teeth or something. No, I'm kidding. The thing is they don't chew. That to me is a big plus. Now, you're dealing with something that could be in the soil, and you're dealing with something that is going to get into your plant. This is what I personally would do. I would definitely be growing in totes. I'm growing in totes anyways, but if you plant in the ground, then you've got these things coming out of the ground. They're going to get into your plants, and they're going to do a number on your plants. So I would definitely be doing this. Now, the other problem is you wouldn't want to use any of your native soil. So that is going to be out. But you still can use leaves and things from your garden and trees to compost. So I would be composting in here and making sure that everything that goes in here hasn't been on the ground, because I don't want to bring anything in here and then give a wonderful home to one of those insects who will be just sitting there all caged up away from other insects, knowing they can't be eaten. In the meantime, they've got all the food they want. So that's not going to work. You want to use no soil from your ground, unless you are composting a hot compost and you know that everything in there is dead. Okay, so think about it. That's the only way I probably would. Now, there's a couple different ways of doing it. Zucchini is big. So I make these tops. Yes, I know I haven't gotten the video out yet, but I make these wonderful tops. I'm growing watermelon down there, and it protects the plants. But the problem is, it protects them when they're little, and like I said, it gets big. So here's what I would do. There's two ways. You would definitely make your holes no matter what. You're going to have to make holes, and nothing's going to get in there. Don't worry about it. If you're in Florida or someplace that gets a lot of rain, you want a lot of holes on the bottom, and you're not dealing with trees. Tree roots will get in there and mess up your totes. So if you're not dealing with tree roots and you have a lot of rain, you make your holes on the bottom. And also make some holes around here, so if you should have such a flash flood, it would drain out. Because remember, gravity is going to pull the water out of your tote, and you don't want this being a pool. This is a planter. So you would have holes on the bottom and no holes there. Now, if you're like us and you're dealing with hot weather, then you put your holes in 1 to 2 inches up and have a lot of holes, so you have your drainage, like we always do with everything else. Now, this is where it's going to change a little. When you compost in here, you have 2 ways of doing it. You can drop tulle in here if you want, drape tulle in here, and then let it hang over. Fill it up just like you would any of your compost. You put your leaves in there, your branches, everything that goes in there. You fill it up. And then on the top, to get your seedlings started, you're going to have small ones, I would put some potting soil. Purchase from the store, potting soil. If you've got compost that you know is completely clean and there would be none of those insects in there, then go ahead and use that. Then you plant your squash and you're going to tent this thing. Now in the beginning, you can just put a cover on it. But as they get bigger, you're going to have to do something else. So you could put 4 stakes in here, and you can put tomato stakes. I would get tall ones, probably 4 foot, and you can drop it all the way inside the tote. And here you can make 2 holes, maybe here too, and zip tie or attach with wire the tomato stakes. So now you've got 4 tomato stakes in here, up high. And that's where you're going to make sure this thing is tooled really well and tight. The tool you put inside, you can bring it up and tie it very easily. If you don't want to put tool inside, you can do the same thing, but you have to make sure it's well contained. So you could just put the tomato stakes, you could drape your tool over it, make it as tall as you want, probably about 2-3 feet, and then tool it over, and that is basically it. If you feel there's gaps, tie a rope around it. And then and put some clothespins. You can clothespin it. That's it. They come and they look for your squash plants because they want to lay their eggs there and they want their babies to get in there and eat your squash plant. If they can't get in, they're going to fly off and go somewhere else. If they can get in, you've made the perfect home for them. So you've got to make sure it's sealed. This is what I would do. Is it 100%? I don't think anything in life is 100%, but I would try it. I definitely would try it. Let's say you set up 5 or 10 of these and one of them gets your squash bugs or squash borers in them, but the other ones don't. Then you've produced some squash. That's if you want to. I think if you really cooked a lot with zucchini, you'd find out you really like it. You cut it up too and freeze some of it. But I love zucchini, and you're going to be picking them little. You're not going to leave them in here and let them get like I do. I just forget about them. You're going to pull them off when they're about that big. But as long as the soil doesn't contain them and you keep it tooled, they can't get in. This is not a fruit fly. This is a good size insect, both of them. And they have to get to your plant or they have to be in the soil. If you put some soil in here and they've got larvae in there and they come up, then you could end up with some issues. So that's what I would do. I would definitely set up a garden. It could be off the ground on chairs, on tables with totes. Could you do it with one of those raised beds, the 6-footers? You probably could. It would be harder because you'd have to go all the way across, and every time you want to go in there and service it and trim off the brown leaves, you got to flip it up. You got to make sure there's nothing flying around that's going to fly in there while you're working, and then you'd have to tool it back, and then you'd have to wrap it. That's 6 foot. That's too big. But with something like this, like a really nice 18-gallon tote, these are so easy to maintain and so easy to use. I don't see why it wouldn't work. I think it's worth a try. Try 1 or 2. You have nothing to lose. I'm not selling you anything, so it's not like I'm giving you a story. I'm telling you, this is what I would do, because I would be determined to grow zucchini. And then I would make sure it's tooled all the time. That's all there is to it. So you're also saving it from squirrels. You're saving it from birds that come and eat the leaves, even though they don't do much damage. Now, there is one more thing. I put the video up on how to hand pollinate. You will have to hand pollinate because you're not letting your bees, your ants may find their way in and they are a pollinator. They go in there and they crawl around, but you don't want to rely on that. Let's put it this way. I wouldn't rely on that. I would then, as soon as I see flowers, I would open it up. I would pollinate them. And if you've got more than one, that's why it's always good to have more than one zucchini plant set up. And it doesn't matter if you want to even plant some other types of squash because you can cross-pollinate. The original first fruit will look like a zucchini. If you kept the seeds that you, let's say, pollinated with some other type of squash, let's say spaghetti squash, then at that point you're going to end up with those seeds, not the fruit, growing into something else, which are quite nice, but we're not going to get into that. So that's what I would do. I would set it up that way and hand pollinate. If you end up with a bunch of male flowers, wrap them up in a plastic bag and put them in the refrigerator and hold them until you have female flowers. And make sure as soon as the female flower opens, pollinate it. Like I said, I've got the video up. It's the easiest thing to do. I hand pollinate so many things because sometimes the weather's not the best or the bees may have missed it and something didn't, happen that it didn't get pollinated. But when you hand pollinate it, that's it. Now your plants are going to be in here. You're going to be composting in place. You're going to be watering it. You can catch the water, and if you want to feed it back, just, make sure there's nothing in it. I don't think there will be anything in it. You can feed it back. You can use it as plant food. But you should be able to grow zucchini. I don't see why not. And in July, if you're starting in July, find a nice warm spot for them, and you may be able to get them going until your frost hits. Once frost hits, it'll kill the plant, which is not your insects. That's Mother Nature doing it by the weather, by the season. So I hope I've given you some ideas on how to grow zucchini in areas where you're fighting those squash bugs and squash borers. And like I said, this is on your side, size. You may be running and screaming from them. When I saw them for the first time, a video of them, and I looked at them, I thought, oh my gosh. There was one plant that was covered in them, and I thought I would be wearing a hairnet and trying to deal with those things. If you're dealing with those, I think this is going to work. And that size is on your side. Keep that in mind. Remember that. because they're big, it's on your side. If they were really tiny, then we would have to really think about something else, but they're not. So tool, it's 40 yards, 54 inches wide. I'll put the link where I get mine, $10 a bolt. One bolt will probably do who knows how many totes for you because it's so long and so wide. So I hope I gave you some ideas and thoughts on maybe how to deal with squash bugs and squash borers. At least that's the way I would do it. Oh my God, it's in my hair!
Gotcha.
I don't need a net anymore. So please like and subscribe, and don't forget
To eat what you grow.
bye-bye. With that, have a wonderful day, and don't forget to eat what you grow. Bye-bye. Ugh. Can you imagine fruit beetles and squash bugs and squash borers?